Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the artist and studio manager here at Baltimore Clayworks. We are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from my office on Piscataway and Susquehannock land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Sam Briegel. She was a Lormina Salter Fellow in 2019. To view more of our virtual content, please visit baltimoreclayworks.org. And I will now turn it over to Sam.
Sharing the screen. Great. Well, thank you, Rebecca. And I just want to say before I get going, thank you so much to Baltimore Clayworks for inviting me to share my work with your community, and also to everyone who signed up and for being curious. I hope that you enjoy it. Okay, without further ado. Like Rebecca said, my name is Sam Briegel. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm just gonna go through some inspiration, some process, things I've been working on. I'm gonna start out with this phrase that I've kind of been telling myself recently, or maybe that I'm puzzled about, which is, why do I have so many clothes but nothing to wear? And I think throughout the presentation that might show itself further, but just to start, I'm also going to go through inspiration and some education process, as well as what I'm planning to do next in my studio and what I've been working on. But just a little, there we go. So some earlier inspirations. It's hard to not include Barbie in this, although a little cliche. And there's that new movie coming out, which I'm curious about seeing. And when I saw people doing this on social media, I had to try it out with one of my pieces. However, I have not posted this, so this is for you all to see. I thought that was a funny graphic. And then also something that I find important to me and important to my work is the sewing process. And this is my sewing machine, Sarah, and it was literally named Sarah. I didn't name her. But this was a gift when I was 9 years old for Christmas. And I even made clothes for my Barbies, but I would tear apart my own clothes and kind of study how they were put together so that I could generate patterns and make myself new clothes. And I think that experience growing up really finds its way into my work. It's also a way to, I enjoy that I know how to alter things because I'm 4'11", and so from the time I was younger until now, I still have to hem on my clothes if I want them to fit properly. So the frustration with clothes not fitting, in the standard sizes has always been part of my life, as well as probably a lot of other people. So education, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. And so I went to undergrad at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. In 2013, I got a BFA in three-dimensional arts. Here's me working in my BFA studio, making large things that will probably crack. And then this is a piece on the right, a piece from my capstone show. And I'm including this here because I think it's important to note that 10 years ago, I still cared about combining the clothing and the pottery process. This slip trailing was done from taking a rubbing of a crocheted shirt and tracing it and then transferring. And so I ended up, so I found clay at the University of Tennessee. And then I did skip a couple years where I spent in Montana doing some internships and post-bac but for the purposes of today, we're going to jump to my MFA in ceramics, which is from Ohio University. While I was there, I started to really dive into the research a bit more and really became interested in the way that historically we have described bodies and vessels in the same terminology. Just to prove that point, here's a Neolithic Chinese pottery form that looks like a body figurine. And then I found this nice graphic of the way that we've described vessels with being, the lip, there's a shoulder and a body. And so I've kind of taken that terminology and that language to use vessels as like stand-in for body in my work. Another inspiration of mine is quilting in generally, but specifically the Victorian era crazy quilts from 1800s. This was a period of time that, with new technologies, there were new and like popular fabrics such as silks and velvets. And I found this excerpt that I really enjoyed from an article that when women of today would have been finished, Victorian era women embellished the embellished. And so I think I really resonate with that, where I've always tried to be finished with something, but something in me continues to like keep embellishing the embellishments. And I feel like my work at right now is at a place where I've really like dove into that and not been afraid of that aesthetic. I look at these quilts and think, I bet they had a lot of fun making them because they're so detailed and just really beautiful. Okay, let's see. So in graduate school, I think I'm including this piece. It feels pretty pivotal to how I think about my work now, which is this is a dress that I saw at a boutique in a size too small for me. So I purchased a size higher online or bigger online. And then when I got it and tried it on, I had that moment of like the zipper still wouldn't shut. And so I filed it away in a section of my closet that I labeled goal clothes, which meaning like one day I'll lose weight and wear that. And so when I share this section of my clothes with people, I often get a lot of response that, I do that too, or that I think that's kind of a thing that we all do, like aspirationally, like I'm gonna wear those clothes again. But for me, that sentiment felt toxic. Like I can't be okay how I am in my body. And so now I have to be like always working towards this thing that's a reminder in my closet. And so I found at the same time, I found this moldable felt called Boss Shape. And so I was able to cut this apart, sew it together, and then steam it into the form that it was very cathartic to do. I cut apart the dress, this denim dress, and then I draped it over the Boss Shape. And I think this is a like 3-part slip cast mold. The product was this, and maybe the ugliest thing I ever made, or maybe one of the coolest. I can't decide. And this really taught me that subtle textures can transfer. The part I didn't enjoy about it, though, was that it is a slipped cast object that once it's done, I cannot manipulate it. And so that led me to flatten the textures and patterns and move towards the slab building process, which allowed me to have more freedom with how I built the forms. This was from my graduate thesis show called Reclaimed Comfort. Just including one piece here, I think this one was important in this was the first time I'm really like using a print. So I think clothing is both, and fabric is both texture and print. And so this is the print version where I'm generating layered screen prints, which if you can see in the middle of that is really concentrated color. And then the exterior parts, I have like rolled the slab onto a surface and really stretched that out, giving it this, stretched quality and like fuzziness of image. And so I think I've always been really interested in pattern over volume. Okay, then I moved to DC, where I did a residency at District Clay. My resident show there was called Blush. And this is when I'm starting to think of like these simpler bodily forms. I never really wanted them to look like as like representational of a body. So I kind of abstracted it to soft curves and hard curves. And then I had the subtle glaze blushing that I would apply with the airbrush. And then I was combining those elements with the textured patterns. This is a decanter set. Then I moved to Baltimore. I wanted to include a little image of my studio. I believe that was when I first moved in because it looks pretty clean. And so I did that from 2019 to 2020. And then of course the pandemic happened and my residency was cut short because of that. However, I did end up having a resident show in July, I believe, and that one I titled Maintaining Comfort. Kind of an extension of the Reclaimed Comfort. So that was the gallery space. So now I'm going to kind of talk about the process and how I'm generating the work that I'm doing. So all of the textures are a plaster slab process that I stick lace. I've now done sequins, any kind of low relief texture onto the table, and then I'm putting up cottle boards or something to stop the plaster, pouring the plaster in about 1 inch thick. In the middle is the fabric embedded into the plaster, and then in the right, the fabric is, when I pull it off, it leaves the negative, highly detailed image. It also like still, some of the fibers are still in there, which doesn't affect my ability to use it. And then I'm also able to avoid undercuts because when I pull the fabric off, the undercuts come with the fabric. So I think in my studio, I have about 30 to 40 of these. They're very difficult to store. And then how I'm using them, I really enjoy incorporating other processes into my work, the sewing process and the, pattern making is important to me, but also I enjoy printmaking processes. So I did learn a technique where I could transfer imagery from plaster onto a slab of clay. And so I've kind of taken that and made my own little like textural transfer with that. So I can now layer colors. So on the right, we're looking at the plaster slab with the low relief texture. The top is going to be that black lace, and then I can work behind it with colored slips to make them pink or green or whatever. And then I'm using a wet slip transfer process. Then I put a rolled out slab of clay. When I squish out all of that slip and wait 10 to 15 minutes, that slip is going to dry out from the plaster and become homogeneous with the slab of clay. And then I'm able to pull it off, and it's there for me to work with, much like a sheet of fabric. I also am doing a screen printing process. So I roll out a slab of clay, and some of the prints are like one layer and some of them are multiple ones. On the right, this one is about 4. But I'm not going to go too far into how I'm generating the easy screens. This is the website I'm getting them. They're a pre-emulsed sheet of screen that by printing out a black and white transparency, you can expose in the sun and create your own. I taught myself. It's there's lots of tutorials online, and their website is a great resource as well. And I found that just with the Amico underglazes, that material goes through the screens. I do have to wait for the layer to dry before I do the next one. And hopefully by that time, the slab will be workable. So So there's that. Here's a little, so all the clothes in my collection or the textures have some kind of story behind them, like I mentioned with the denim dress, and this one is also a dress I've made into a texture, which like sometimes I don't have enough fabric for. This one I was able to generate a couple from this one. And then in the middle is the slab that I can use these two-dimensional patterns to cut out. And then I believe around like these triangle mugs, and now my work is a combination of slab building and throwing. I work with a very difficult porcelain. It's the Laguna Frost, and I honestly don't recommend anyone work with it unless they are dedicated to problem solving it. For me, it takes stain very well. It is translucent, and so it's important that when I'm talking about these delicate fabrics like lace and sequins, that they are translucent. And so I do fight the material for the aesthetic of it, but I found that throwing the slab or throwing a base on the wheel and attaching a slab and then compressing it from the inside helps with warping and cracking, and then I'm able to flip it over and trim it like a normal pot. So that's been a really fun way to work with the slabs. Like I mentioned, the slab throwing process. So there's a thrown base. It's very insignificant it's not very exciting what I'm throwing. I'm throwing tiny bowls or flat bases. And then I'm layering, the lace part. When I have an angle change, I can't really make the slab go in and out. So anytime I want a shape to have, some undulation, I need to create a seam, and then I can do that on the wheel and kind of stretch it out. So this is the dimple mug form. And on the right is a new style that's more of a flat bottomed mug with straight walls. Let's see. I have to mention Lizzo here because when I think about, so the sequin texture is a new one, and although it is not it wasn't, something in my wardrobe that I cut apart and made a slab of, it's more of an aspirational print. I think of Lizzo and I think of, just her existing and her body is radical. And there's so much commentary on it. And there's so much discussion about, someone in that body type can't do what she's doing. And oftentimes we miss like the talent and how much of an amazing musician she is. And so I love that she's unapologetically wearing these very luxurious patterns. And I find that inspiring. And so in my work, I've kind of created this mermaid sequin collection for a confidence and a joy that I want the work to have. Additionally, so this is a new kind of inspiration, but this Lyrica Matoshi strawberry dress was a viral trend during the pandemic. And it's kind of like, I'm so fascinated by this whole, how it got viral, because so it's this designer and model wore this dress to the Grammys. This is Tess Holiday over here on the right. And 7 months before it was viral. And she made it on like worst dress list at the Grammys. And then it gained a lot of popularity. It's kind of like this, pinnacle of femininity. It is like pink and lacy and glittery. And I think during the pandemic, when there was nowhere to go and people wanted to escape, I think they were very drawn to this design. It is $500, so that does exclude some people. But even though some people couldn't afford it, there was all this fan art generated about it. Anyway, controversial as it is, I believe that I wanted to create my own little fan art to it. So the strawberry print was born out of inspiration from this. And then we're getting into what's next. So I've been making more complex screen prints. And I'm revisiting teapots. Teapots have always been a difficult form. My clay doesn't enjoy them. It doesn't enjoy being in that form and that much hand building. But I started off with smaller ones. So the smaller the piece, the smaller the failure, if it does. And these little dessert plates. And I've started adding more gold and more pearl, really embellishing the embellishments. And then generating my own designs. This wasn't one that I made from a dress necessarily, but kind of inspired by. So I'm really enjoying this floral deco print. And let's see, all right. So I also the slabs that I'm working with are about 11 by 17 inches. And so with one, I can maybe get a couple mugs or a big section of a vase, or and then there's always some leftovers, much like you would have with fabric. And so these little pieces on the plates are me using my scraps to create these like quilted snack plates. And so I have ideas of creating these like wall quilts out of them. So each of them has a little nichrome wire attached. This was me playing around on Illustrator, but I'm enjoying, I need to find the right wall. So that's what's next. Here are my sources. And thank you. You can follow my Instagram here, and then my website is here. I intermittently have shop updates. I announce them on my website. I do have some upcoming workshops that you can take a look. They're listed on my website. And I think we can do questions, and thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.